Um, it is what it is. Anyways, okay, so welcome again, everyone. Obviously, this is the same topic as it was last week. The internet didn't work last week. Hopefully, it works a little bit better this week. And then you can hear me out uninterrupted. I think everyone knows the topic. This is about nutrition outside of the sport. Again, as I said the last time, I'll be the first to say that I'm not a sports nutritionist, but I am someone that who had to study every corner of performance because I've never really relied on natural talent. And I really know my limitations. I'm not built like the Norwegians. Another Norwegian just came this weekend. So my edge has always been about mastering the details, and this comes to training, recovery, every controllable factor, and this also includes nutrition. Kind of that curiosity and necessity pushed me to dive deep into how food choices affect both performance and energy throughout the day. So today is not about cutting carbs or chasing diets. It's more about teaching you or giving you the tools and the standing of how everything that you eat affects your well-being, your energy levels throughout the day, and ultimately your performance as well. So I'm gonna do a very summarized slide presentation about every slide that I already talked to in the past or last week, but I'll still touch on the essential. Okay, let's get to it. So, when it comes to well-being and eating well, the golden rule is super simple. Control your blood sugar levels throughout the day. It really is this simple. Good nutrition, especially outside of sports, does come down to keep blood sugar levels steady throughout the day. Every meal, everything we eat, a bar, a bagel, just eggs, does shift the level of your blood sugar. And depending on what we eat, either carbs, protein, or fats, or a combination of all three, and when we eat it, we either have steady energy throughout the day or we trigger the classic roller coaster and off spikes and crashes throughout the day and eventually weight gain. Whenever we eat carbs, they're broken down into glucose, which is our body's main fuel source. Insulin acts like that key that lets glucose into the cells to be used or to be stored. The goal isn't about avoiding carbs, but to keep somewhat things balanced throughout the day. You need to fuel your brain, you need to fuel your muscles just to live. You do have a resting metabolic rate. Basically, the energy or calories that you burn throughout the day if you were just sitting on the couch doing nothing. So it's not like if you're not exercising, you don't need energy. You do need energy. So we're not avoiding carbs, but we're timing it to our benefit and to our performance. For athletes, the balance means sustainable energy throughout the day and also sharper focus and ultimately also better recovery. The big spikes at the wrong time may give you a quick like buzz, but do if they're very quick and if you're not using that energy, they do end in a crash of energy. So day to day, the same rule kind of applies. When you try to control your glucose or your blood sugar levels, you do control your energy, your moods, and ultimately your performance. It's all about performance, as you probably figured by now. So after we eat carbs, blood sugar level rises. But how it rises depends on the type of carbs. A balanced response, think complex carbs with or complex meals with protein, fat, or fiber, gives you obviously a steady rise. and a smooth drop. This means when you look at this chart on your screen, this means if you have something that's more or has more complex carbs, more protein, a little bit more fat, a little bit more fiber, the response of your blood sugar level is kind of like the yellow or orange line. A spiky response, something like candy, soda, cookies, anything that's very high in simple sugar, does shoot up your blood sugar level very fast, but it almost as fast. And if you don't need it, if you're not using that energy, it basically you crash almost immediately as insulin kicks in, and insulin will handle the blood sugar level. Obviously, I don't know if obviously when you have diabetes and when you have diseases where you can't really control the insulin response to the blood sugar level rises, that's dangerous. Obviously, some of these things don't apply to people that do have diabetes. For people that do struggle with diabetes, obviously, I'm not a doctor, and this is definitely something that you need to talk to a proper physician and nutritionist to see how can you manage this throughout the day. And obviously, at this point, you probably know how to handle it. So we're trying to what we want is to build. You have to think of simple carbs as gasoline, and I think I made this same comparison last time, where gasoline basically you get an instant flame. It goes really fast. On the other hand, when we have complex carbs, those are more like I think logs. That I think that was the last time. The last time I also made that comparison. Complex carbs are more like logs. They logs of wood that you put on the fire. So they burn really slow, and it's a very steady burn. There's no it doesn't just put out. It doesn't get put out instantly. So both gasoline and the logs, they do have uh, they, they they need to be in our daily or when we think about meals, they need to be both included in our day to day, but timing is very important. So on the day to day meals and recovery, whether we are putting gasoline into the fire or more logs, that's when you have to think wisely and think about all the things that I'm going to explain next, and make the better choices. Again, this is not about, oh, you should at 3 p.m. eat a protein bar, and if you're going to do a workout, you should eat a Pop Tart. Maybe you should, but you have to think that all the carbs have a place in our nutrition, and all the carbs have a place in our day to day. You just have to be smart when making these choices. When obviously when we eat a lot of sugar, blood sugar again spikes very fast. Insulin basically floods your system, and often overshoots how much you actually need, and that's why you do have the crash very fast. And that cycle of eating very simple sugar and then having the crash, it's not only it's not healthy, but also it snowballs into cravings, hunger, um, unhealthy nutrition, and ultimately, obviously, storing the extra energy in fat. The goal really is not to cut anything out of your day to day, but to avoid the roller coaster. So that's why, I mean, we learn as kids that we shouldn't be eating cookies all day long. We shouldn't do meals based on simple sugars because of this roller coaster, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Simple carbs like soda, white breads digest very quickly, and they spike you very hard or very fast. Complex carbs, things like all wheat grains, oats, beans, veggies, anything that's more complex in terms of just talking about carbs, does release glucose more slowly, and pairing that slow response of the more complex carbs with protein or fat, because fat slows digestion and protein does take a little longer to be processed. Everything combined will smooth out things when we are talking about blood sugar response or blood sugar level response. For athletes, it really tends to be all about the timing, keeping the fast carbs for either during or right before training, and the rest of the time you just go with anything that has a mild response on your blood sugar levels. So you have steady energy throughout the day, so your blood sugar level doesn't rise to a peak where insulin gets shot into your system, and obviously it overshoots often when insulin gets shot, and then you have the crash. So you want something that's more steady, provide more steady fuel throughout the day. So carbs are the main driver of blood sugar changes. I mean, as you can see on the initial on the chart right above me, they break down into glucose, and the usually if you have just sugar, just carbs, nothing that's very complex and has so slow release of glucose, they tend to shoot very high. And then protein has a more mild influence into blood sugar levels. Fat also, as you can also see on this graph, this is so funny that I can point up. They do raise blood sugar level almost to fat barely raises blood sugar level. The response of protein and fat is much more mild, much more smoother, much more stable, and that's really your goal. Simple carbs, again, like simple carbs on the, let me see, on the graph over there to the right of the screen, you can see how different carbs also act differently on your blood sugar level. Refined carbs like white breads does spike it a little bit more, and then more balanced or more complex carbs does have to a more mild response on blood sugar levels. So in short, outside of workouts, we do aim to live. If we're looking at the graph on the right, we aim to live more on the response of the blue line, more kind of mild, never really rise it too high, never having to drop it too low. Obviously, everyone jokes about, oh, my blood sugar level is very low when you're hungry, especially one of our dogs. His blood sugar level is always very low because he's always hungry. But we don't want, we obviously we're immediately craving simple sugars, because when you're hungry, your blood sugar level is low, your body's is immediately need and craving is, I need something quickly or quick that immediately rises blood sugar level. Your body goes into almost, I need to preserve myself, I need to save myself. You don't want the blood sugar level to drop too low. And obviously that's why when the cravings come, when you immediately feel like eating McDonald's, or when you immediately feel like eating a candy bar, it's probably because you went too long on the day without eating. Your blood sugar level is very low. So even when you do this, even when you go many hours without eating, think about blood sugar level and how the item that you pick is going to affect that blood sugar level. If you went 4 or 5 hours without eating, obviously you're probably gonna crave a Snickers bar versus rice and pasta, or rice and chicken. It's just your body telling you, I need something quick. Sure, you need something quick, but if you eat the proper meal, something that's more complex, not only that craving will go away quickly, but also the response is much more stable. So you won't feel sleepy, you won't have a crash of energy in an hour, and it's much more healthy and ultimately just provides or promotes much better well-being throughout the day, and your brain, like your brain will think much more clearly too. Trust me. Okay, so you should not avoid carbs entirely outside of workouts. It's really all about timing. So complex carbs like oats, rice, potatoes, whole grains, a few hours before training, which will allow your body to process, digest it slowly, keep blood sugar levels steady, and then topping up your glycogen storage is like 2-3 hours before a workout. They make sense. Simple sugars work best right before or during a workout when you need something fast, something quick. For like if you eat a Pop Tart, I give examples of the Pop Tart because ultimately I only eat Pop Tarts before workouts. I don't know why. But simple sugars like a Pop Tart, it's a very high in sugar, obviously. Um, this is more appropriate right before the workouts, because you need to rise the blood sugar level because you're probably going to use it immediately. The problem is if you eat the Pop Tart 3 hours before, or if you eat them beyond the 60, 90 minutes before you start the workout, insulin may be already injected into your bloodstream. It may have already cleared the glucose before you even start. This means if you eat the Pop Tart too soon before a workout, you may actually start the workout without energy or through the process where the blood sugar level is going down, and you may actually feel even more hungry before you even start the workout. So simple sugars do have a place in your nutrition, but not too far away from the workout where by the time you start the workout, insulin already acted and you're probably going through a phase of low energy and maybe even sleepy. So like a good example that I like to give is like early if you're waking up at 5 a.m., like a lot of you in Arizona do wake up early because obviously summer is hard. Everyone wakes up early. Early morning workouts. You don't want to wake up 3 hours before the workout because I mean, if you have to be on the bike at 5:30 to finish the workout, you would have to wake up at 2 a.m. to eat something more complex. So sure, like you wake up early, so you may wake up 30 minutes before the workout, so you want something quick, something that's probably not a bagel because it's probably too slow to be processed by your body. The response is kind of mild, unless it's an easy workout and you don't need the energy right away. So if you wake up 30 minutes before a workout, you need something that's more quick, more high in sugar, that does have that response in blood sugar level. Something like a gel, again, the Pop Tart. But then when we compare this to race morning, if you're going into a race, you may wake up 2-3 hours before, and then if you're waking up 2-3 hours before a workout, then maybe the bagel makes more sense, the oatmeal makes more sense because it does help top up glycogen from a night of sleep. Because I don't know if you guys know or if it's common sense, but through the night you do burn through glycogen. It's mostly liver glycogen. This means when you wake up, your liver glycogen is kind of low. This means also when you wake up and you go work out immediately, it takes a while for your body to like, what do I do? I don't have glycogen on my liver. What do I do? What do I do? And then it goes to either fat storages or muscle glycogen. But when you wake up, your liver glycogen is low. So when if you don't eat anything, obviously your energy level will be low. And so if on race morning, if you're waking up 3 hours before the race, you may want something more complex to top up not only muscle glycogen that maybe got depleted the day before in the evening or through the night, but also top up glycogen on your liver. So this is not about good and bad carbs. This is not about making carbs the bad guy in all of this. But when we pick food items, when we make choices to what to eat, we have to think, how will this affect my blood sugar level? If you're going to sit on a plane on a 7-hour flight, does it make sense for you to be eating M&Ms before the flight? No, it doesn't make sense because M&Ms are very high in sugar. They also are very high in fat. So actually the response of M&Ms may be kind of more mild. But still, you don't want candy before going on a flight because you're probably going to feel like shit within an hour and you're on a flight and maybe you want to sleep. And that's actually a good trick, like having something very sugary to sleep on the flight. I've done that in the past. But it's all about understanding how everything that you choose throughout the day affects your blood sugar level and what is the purpose of the item that you are going to eat, are going to choose, whatever you are. If you're at a conference and you have snacks through on the interval, and if there's fruits, if there's yogurt, and if there's candy, which one would make the more sense? And I'll tell you immediately that it's the yogurt because it will have a more mild response than the candy for sure. And then fruits, it kind of depends on the fruit. Some fruit have fruit is still sugar, it's still fructose. So some fruit have a higher response on blood sugar level, and other fruit have more mild response on blood sugar level. And this is where the glycemic index of every food item that you eat would be worth investigating. So bananas have a very low glycemic index. That means the response of bananas on the blood sugar level is kind of more mild versus grapes. Grapes have a very high glycemic index. Okay, so the real trick about well-being, body composition is timing and energy balance. So avoiding the moments when your body is more likely to store whatever you eat in fat. When you eat carbs, insulin rises to move glucose into the muscles and liver as glycogen. But once that tank are when both muscle glycogen and liver glycogen is full, when the tanks of glycogen are full, any extra glucose is converted into fat. So in Portugal, we have a saying that goes like 1 second in your mouth, forever on your hips. This is related, it's more towards kids and it's also related to chocolate, mostly because the chocolate will spend a few seconds in your mouth and then it will forever stay in your hips because the sugar, obviously, chocolate is very high in sugar. If you eat a lot of chocolate, you probably will not only fill up your glycogen storages, but also your body will store that energy into fat. And in Portugal, we say it stays on the hips. I'm Portuguese, so kind of I can say this because it does stay in my hips. Just FYI. During exercise, it's kind of the opposite. Muscles act like sponges, like soaking up every little gram of glucose for energy. And there's very little insulin needed when you're exercising. Um, and when you're exercising, fat storage and glycogen storage it's not completely turned off, but let's assume it is like the amount of energy, extra energy that you intake from eating fast carbs during exercise, the amount of that will surpass what you need is minimal. And not only is minimal, but your body has a very, very hard time storing anything, either as fat or glycogen during exercise, because the priority of your body is to fuel the muscles during exercise. The exception is if the intensity of the workout is very, very low. This means on very, very low intensity, stuff like ultra marathons, day long marathons. I'm not talking about Ironman. Ironman is still too fast. The intensity of Ironman is still way too fast for your body to store anything. But think about I mean, I call it glorified walks, those like 200-mile ultra marathons. During those, any extra energy that you eat does get stored slightly just because the demand is so low and your heart rate is probably very low. So your body has more availability to do other things other than fueling your muscles. When it comes to fat, it does what any fat that you eat, dietary fat, it doesn't necessarily or automatically become body fat. When energy intake matches what you burn, fat is mostly used for fuel. It may also be used for hormone balance and recovery, but it tends to be used as fuel if what you eat matches what you burn. It's really only when there's a calorie surplus, especially when carbs and insulin are very high, that fat tends to store. On day to day, balance tends to be everything really. If carbs are high, you burn, or if carb demand is high, you burn carbs. When they're low, you will burn a little bit more fat, but for performance, and this is important piece of the puzzle because I mean obviously there's a lot of talk about keto diets and using fat as fuel. For performance purposes, glucose will always be your body's go-to fuel. When you're exercising, regardless of what you ate, glycogen, your any glucose that you have here in your bloodstream, that is always the primary go-to fuel, regardless of how high your fat oxidation is, regardless of how in ketosis you are. Carbs are always the main source of fuel for your body. So people think, oh, sorry, this start. Um, People often think that carbs stop fat from burning, and this is a misconception. It's quite the opposite. Carbs are, you have to think of carbs as a spark that keeps fat burning efficiently. And this is why we like I think a lot of you have heard that fat burns on a carb flame, or fat I think the other was fat burns on a bed of carbs at very low intensity, relatively low, not walking. But at low intensity, your body does tend to rely more on fat. Well, on this particular scenario, also walking, your body does tend to rely more on fat. But as effort increases, the carbs are needed to keep energy production going. Without them, fat metabolism slows down and performance suffers. So when we're talking about fat oxidation, losing weight, we can't cut carbs out of the equation, because when we cut carbs out of the equation, your body does tend to slow down its entire metabolism. This is not only just metabolism for performance, but also fat metabolism. So we don't carbs don't block fat from burning. They do tend to enable it, especially if you're working hard for long hours. Your body can't shut down, meaning if you don't fuel with some carbs, because the metabolism goes low, everything slows down because your body is going into self-preservation mode because it's out of carbs, it's out of that simple sugar. Your body will not burn fat as efficiently either. So the best case scenario is plenty of carbs during exercise, plenty of carbs fueling the performance, and also going long because every time you go on long, steady aerobic days, and this is where it's important to keep intensity at a check, not go too hard because every time you go too hard, your body goes, okay, this is way too intense. I need to burn more glycogen. Your body relies a lot more glycogen on higher efforts. This means why, or this is one of the reasons why I keep saying for you guys to be very dialed with your zones. When you go out, stay in zone one. Don't go out to zone two, zone three, because not only you're preventing your body from important physiological adaptations, namely building mitochondrial, all of the physiological adaptations that come from zone one training, but also your body becomes very or less efficient at burning fat at higher rates. This is why it's so important for triathletes specifically to stay in zone one on long, long days of exercise and then try to build the effort because this will also teach your body to build the effort throughout the day and not go into self-preservation mode. And if your body has plenty of carbs, he will your body knows your body is very smart. Your body knows when to switch from carbs to fat to carbs, and making this process very efficient is very important, especially for Ironman training. Even for half Ironman distance, it's very important to stay in the zones, and why you should eat carbs during exercise because ultimately it also improves the fat burning. Okay, next slide. Why is this not going? Next slide. Okay, so takeaways, and this is kind of almost a summary of everything. Again, as I said initially, this is not about cutting carbs. This is not about drastic diets. It's about understanding how every choice that you make outside of sports does affect your blood sugar level and ultimately how it affects your well-being, body composition, fat oxidation, everything really. Like blood sugar level are probably the most important concept that I try to pass on to other athletes because it's so important to improve body composition and just feel good. So the goal is not to eliminate sugar completely. It's about context and timing, obviously, of everything. Day to day or everyday life, we want steady, complex carbs that keep blood sugar levels stable when we're not exercising. Before exercise, quick sugars do have a more important role, and obviously during exercise, obviously very important role. But quick sugars should be used as almost as a tool right around training, before, after, and I'll explain the after a little bit more. But before and during, because your muscles, they do act like sponges. They do soak up glucose, they burn it immediately, and they do need it to perform well. So outside of sports, the quick sugars are if you're sitting on the couch, if you're going on a trip, if you're in a conference, if you're at a wedding, the quick sugar will spike your blood sugar level. The spike in insulin will most likely overshoot, and not only you'll have the crash of like low energy, sleepy, some brain fog, but you'll probably be topping up your glycogen, and you may even like be storing that sugar as fat. So this is why balance is so important. Like stable blood sugar level means fewer cravings, like better focus, and honestly, like again, like consistent energy. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself a lot, but it's really all about keeping your blood sugar level. On the real world, it's hard sometimes. Like airports are full of high sugar snacks like candy, pastry. I mean, who hasn't gone through an American airport and smelled what is it called? Cinnabon? It's insane. Like obviously your brain is like, I want that. And obviously it will give you a burst of energy that, I mean, you'll feel energized immediately, but almost as fast, you'll probably feel tired, you'll feel hungry again, so you'll probably be craving more. What happens is that when the blood sugar level spikes, insulin usually overshoots it. You have a drop in energy, and then not only you feel tired and low energy, but because it overshoots and you come down to a level where you're probably again in low blood sugar state, you have more cravings. So sugar cravings and spikes, not using that sugar, will most likely to to lead to another episode of craving within an hour. And this is so obvious when you just are very aware of this. If you go to an airport and you eat candy, I could almost guarantee that you can time yourself and see how long before you have another craving, and it tends to be within an hour, 90 minutes. And it happens, like you can test it out. And when we compare this response to high fat protein wheat rich snacks or protein bars, stuff like, I don't know, nuts, cheese. Cheese is not bad, although obviously it's mostly fat. But yogurt, what's it called? Jerky. Is it jerky? The dry the dried meat, or even like in airports nowadays, you have hard boiled eggs. Anything that has obviously either high fat. If you go with a high fat, I would prefer nuts. Nuts tend to be a little more healthy than cheese, but cheese is not bad. Yogurt, jerky, hard boiled eggs are very good options, because almost they barely move the blood sugar needle. They give you more long lasting energy, and they do keep you satisfied ultimately, because protein does keep you satisfied. The caveat here is that you have to be careful with fat. Fat is very calorie dense, so the portion size of fat still really matters. So if you out of options, and if you have a high product that's very high in fat versus something like candy or sugar, and you're not going to exercise immediately after, you may be better off with a high fat product versus the high sugar, just because you'll probably need to eat less to feel more satisfied, and the blood response is more steady. It's really, I think the although everyone likes go to the or everyone likes going on trips, going to the gas station, going to, I don't know, airports or whatever it is that has a convenience store, and like and everyone likes to pick the candy bar or the cinnamon roll. I do too, but it's really, you're always more likely to be doing the better choice if you pick something that's high on protein, more savory, more fat based if needed, because you'll be avoiding the roller coaster of blood sugar level spikes and crashes, and you'll probably need to eat less over the next 3 hours because you'll keep you more satisfied. So bottom line, save the quick sugars for training when your muscles are burning them. And outside of sports, make choices that keep blood sugar levels stable. And really, this is how you support performance. And ultimately, this is not just about performance, but also long-term health, avoiding diabetes, improving body composition, just everything, which is everything is tied to what we eat, the choices that we make, and ultimately how we go about our meals on the day to day. So yeah, so that's it. I mean, I think again, this is not about giving you at 3 p.m. you need to eat a nut, or at 1 p.m. you need to eat rice and chicken. Before bed you need to eat salads. It's not about that. It's about understanding how everything affects your blood sugar levels, how to keep it stable, and make wise decisions, because it's impossible. And this is where most nutritionists fail. You go to a nutritionist, anyone that doesn't understand the lifestyle of a triathlete, and they don't understand that half the meals that we do is on the go. The other half is based on gas stations or convenience stores or airport food. Because like it's impossible. Like if I have a meal plan from a nutritionist and he says I need to eat rice on Mondays, pasta on Wednesdays, chicken on Tuesdays, not only I'm not able to follow that, and but also it's going to snowball into me not being confident that that plan is right for me, and that I cannot ever follow a meal plan because it's so complicated. Either like I'm on the go, or I don't have the time to do a proper meal. But if I understand that every item that I eat has a blood sugar level response, and if I make right choices, this will help you make choices wherever you are. If you're on a gas station, if you're in Mexico, if you're in, I don't know, Qatar, whatever it is, make wise choices based on how every item affects your blood sugar levels. And if you're in training, if you're in the middle of the ride, um, I mean, I don't like to say that calories during the ride don't count, but you are able to eat a little bit more sugar dense foods during exercise. Although I don't like to promote eating donuts on every single long ride, but maybe if you do eat that donuts, maybe the performance on that ride will be better, because you will have not only a spike in blood sugar level, but or you won't have a spike. You will have glucose running through your system, and your muscles basically burn glucose at a very high rate. So have the donuts, have whatever you want, have the Pop Tart, but you time it properly with training, because it does make a difference ultimately. Okay, I don't have more. This is. I hope this helps you understand why blood sugar level is very important. But kind of like I just wanted to give you this tool to make wise choices. Okay, so if do you have any questions regarding anything? No, that was quick. Well, if you guys don't have any questions, I think I can stop. I don't know. Ellie, do you have any questions? She no, she's top foods to bring on a flight. Top foods to bring
I
on a
was,
flight. Go ahead.
yeah, I was going to ask a question also as far as white rice and brown rice. Do you make a distinction between those, or are they all considered the same as the white bread, which are faster carbs?
Okay. When yes, there is and Guy, I'll answer yours next. There is a difference between white breads, white breads, whole wheat breads. There's a difference between white rice, brown rice. The darker the grain, the more complex carbs they have. The less processed they are, the lower sugar content, simple sugar, is the item. So white bread has a lot more complex, refined sugar versus darker breads. Same with rice. Brown rice tends to be less processed, tends to be whole grain, versus white rice that has a different response. If you want to compare items like this, the best way is to go on the internet and dig into glycemic index of every food item that you want. So, for instance, I don't know. you probably have a hard time finding the glycemic index of Adra bar because I mean it's a very complex bar because it has a lot of macros in it. So it has protein, fat, carbs. So how do we know the glycemic index of that item in particular? However, simple things like fruit, every veggie, every rice, pasta, breads, everything that's more common in nutrition, there's usually a glycemic index associated with it, and the higher it is, the more we want to avoid it outside of sports. So this helps you with why would you pick whole grain bread versus white bread? If you're not going to exercise, the whole grain makes more sense. If you're going to exercise, the white bread makes more sense. When we're carb loading, we're trying to store glycogen. We don't want the whole grain because not only the whole grain has a more dialed response on blood sugar level, but it's probably very high on fiber, and fiber does delay digestion, and we want to top the glycogen as fast as possible, usually 24 hours before a race. So before a race, if we're doing a carb loading protocol, it makes more sense stuff that fill your glycogen faster. Does this mean you should eat a box of cookies? Not really, because the blood sugar level response of cookies is very, very high compared to white rice or white breads. So you're most likely going to overshoot, your body's going to overshoot insulin response to a box of cookies. So you have to think smart with every item. But on the rice in particular, brown rice makes more sense than white rice if you're not carb loading. If you're carb loading, maybe the white rice makes a little more sense. Is this clear or is this still very confusing?
Oh, thank you.
No.
Explains it.
Okay. Guy, so top foods to bring on a flight. I mean, the my top foods on a flight and when traveling are always the same. Nuts, and protein bars. They tend to have a more mild response on blood sugar level. They tend to fill you up more, and they're like the protein bars nowadays. Not necessarily the Adra bars. The Adra bars are pretty good, but obviously they're a little more hard to find. If you go to a gas station, you won't find the Adra bar. But something that's very high in protein tends to have a more mild response on blood sugar level. So if you couldn't carry anything from the house and you need to stop at the convenience store in the airport, maybe grab that protein bar or nuts. Every convenience store has nuts. The reason why I would avoid nuts is just because they're very pricey. Nuts at the airport are very expensive. It's stupidly expensive. So nuts, sure, but protein bar and nuts would be my top questions. Okay, question four, Brianna. Say you have a long ride and I get and I get up an hour before you start. Is there a benefit to combining high plus low glycemic index carbs like honey, oats versus just Pop Tarts? Will the low glycemic index food help you later in the ride to maintain energy? So, if you wake up too close to a ride, if you need, and this is also why I do tell you guys to build the effort. If you're going on a 5 hour bike ride, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to eat a gel before a training ride, because you want to build effort, you want to have energy level or sustainable energy levels throughout the rides. And what happens with the gel is that it does rise your blood sugar levels very quickly. And it would be good if you have intervals on the first hour. But most likely, and I very rarely prescribe intervals on the first hour. I do like you guys to build, so it does make more sense to combine like simple carbs to complex carbs to have a mix of both, even if it's within an hour of the ride to have more sustainable energy throughout the ride. And then if there is intensity on that ride, I would have a gel right before it. And obviously, I mean, I've been pushing everyone to use high carbs during exercise because you want to provide your body with sustainable energy, usable energy during the ride. The danger with a big meal before or too close to a long ride is that your body needs to digest everything. So if you eat like a lot of oats with nuts and blueberries 15 minutes before the ride, by the time you start the ride, you're already in stress. Your body's already digesting that, and it will not digest that quickly. Anything that has a low response on blood sugar level is probably also slower to digest. This means within the first 30 minutes of the ride, you probably feel like shit. Um, so a good rule of thumb is to have some, but not a lot. So if you want to have a bagel before you go ride, if you want to have oats before you go ride, have it, but don't have a lot of it. You really only need like 40, 50 grams of carbs with protein and fat mixing it. And when you do the math, 40 or 50 grams of carbs in a form of oatmeal or a bagel is 40. It's not that much. So yeah, I think for the long days, I would like have something more complex right before the ride, but not a lot of it. And then as soon as you start the ride, sports drink, gels as we go. Another question, is there an importance to getting some probiotics, natural sources, maybe yogurt, or is this a topic that needs its own discussion? So this is probiotics is a very interesting field or area. I'm not really qualified to talk too much about it. There is some there is been some discussion about probiotics, keeping your gut bacteria healthy. I don't really know a lot about the subject. I should because I've worked with Nella in the past. They just make probiotics. And but I basically just did what they told me, basically took the pills and whatever. um, I would maybe for another topic. This is something that I probably want to dig into as well. Um, I do eat yogurt recent or frequently. It's something that's just part of my day-to-day nutrition. And obviously probiotics do are present in yogurt. When I was working with Jesse, my coach for many years, we did talk about probiotics, and he basically his response was so straightforward that I never questioned. He basically said, if you eat a yogurt every 3 days, you're fine. So I don't know where he based this saying on it, and this is something that I just do naturally. But yeah, this is maybe something that I also need to do some research because I'm just not qualified to answer the importance of probiotics, how everything affect or how probiotics affect digestion, and obviously just your gut well-being. I would need to do some research on my own.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Anything else, guys? No? I hope everyone learned a lot. I know it's very boring to hear me talk. Sometimes my English is not my main language, so just so you guys know, if you guys haven't figured that one out. Okay, so if there's no more questions, thank you all for joining. This is a recorded session. If you need to go back, I'll send you an email with this. And yeah, I'll have to wrap this up and talk to you guys later in this week. Uh, Yeah, so there's a few of you guys going to Ironman California. If you guys didn't see Paul's message on the WhatsApp group, or if you haven't downloaded WhatsApp yet, he's doing a carb loading session on Saturday before the race in Sacramento. So I hope you guys can get together and uh, eat carbs freely the day before. Okay. If nothing else, I'll let you guys go. Thank you for joining. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.